Hello and good evening, everybody. And tonight I would like to welcome everyone to episode 39 of Album Rant. And believe it or not, during that interval when I was sick, unfortunately, and I was gone for 2 weeks, we did pass the 1-year anniversary, and I really wish I had been capable of doing something big for that moment, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do, and you gotta take care of yourself, and life happens. But anyways, maybe we'll do something special for the 2nd-year anniversary. But right now, I would like to focus in tonight on the world of Black Sabbath. Now, this is not my second review of a Black Sabbath album. However, it is my first review of a Black Sabbath album with Ozzy Osbourne on lead vocals and one from their quote-unquote classic era. And I decided to focus my attention on their second studio release, released in 1970, entitled Paranoid, which is widely considered to be their best release of all time. I may take issue with that, but I cannot deny the importance that this album has had, not only on music as a whole, but my life as a whole. But, kind of giving you an idea of how we got here, Black Sabbath was formed by, I believe, the remnants of a band called Mythology, which included lead guitarist Tony Iommi and drummer Bill Ward. And they were later joined by other members by the names of Ozzy Osbourne on lead vocals and Geezer Butler on bass guitar. And they went through a variety and a very revolving door of band names. And at one point, the band was called Earth, which Ozzy Osbourne reportedly hated, which I can kind of understand. It kind of lumps you in with the whole hippie movement and everything, which these guys have been very clear they were never any part of, and I gotta respect that. Now, believe it or not, during this period in the band's history, Tony Iommi actually did leave for a very brief period of time to join Jethro Tull of all artists, and I don't think he was ever on any studio albums with Jethro Tull, but he was actually in that band for a little bit, so that is a very interesting, albeit not very useful piece of trivia. But anyways, Tony Iommi came back, and eventually, through a whole bunch of stuff, they finally settled on the name Black Sabbath. And they released their very first single in the year 1969, which was a cover of Evil Woman, Don't You Play Those Games With Me. And I have heard that single, and I gotta be honest, the song itself, I don't find to be anything special. I mean, I enjoy it and everything, but the band had not really come into form yet, and they had not fully found their sound yet, and it sounds kind of flat in my opinion, but it was, enough to get the band on their feet, because the following year, they released their very first debut album, appropriately entitled Black Sabbath, released in early 1970. Now, I did a review of a Led Zeppelin album earlier, and I explained that Led Zeppelin was a game changer. They really, really upped the ante. Before, most bands were pretty much in the line of the Beatles. I mean, Deep Purple was around back then, but they were doing their own psychedelic stuff. Pink Floyd was around, but I never really feel that they reached the level of rawness and aggression of Led Zeppelin. And who else do we have back then? We had the Who back then, but again, they were still kind of doing the whole Beatles thing. But Led Zeppelin really stepped it up a notch. Well, having said that, Black Sabbath came in a few years later, and they took it even further. And they not only had some very, very killer guitar work, They not only had a very raw and metallic sound, I mean, by today's standards, this still is kind of soft, but for the late 60s, early 70s, this was really pushing it. But Black Sabbath incorporated some very, very dark lyrical material, which Led Zeppelin never fully got around to or never fully went that direction or went that way, because the very first song off the album Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath was entitled Black Sabbath. And this thing was dark and eerie. And it even had critics accusing the band of being satanic. Woo! Yeah, these guys should have been around 13 years later when Merciful Fate hit the scene. They would very much revoke their criticisms by that point. I mean, yeah, exactly. Again, by today's standards, it was pretty tame, but for 1970, this thing was just out there. Not only was the music very aggressive, but the lyrical content was scary. But there were also a ton of hit singles off that album that I love, such as The Wizard, Behind the Wall of Sleep, NIB, Wicked World, and a cover of Ainsley Dunbar's Warning, which I absolutely dig. That thing rocks. And Tony Iommi really has a chance to show off his skills because he has a killer guitar solo in the interlude, and I love it. But anyways, later that year, they followed up the success of that debut record with their second record, the subject of tonight's review, entitled Paranoid. And here is the cover. And I'm going to say right off the bat, I am not really digging that cover. I'm not quite sure what that is supposed to be, but whatever. I guess I'll take the advice of my third grade teacher, Miss Tucker, and not judge an album by its cover, or a book by its cover. I'll say an album by its cover. So yeah, there you go. And I intend not to, so let's go ahead and see what is inside of here. We have a nice picture of the band. Ozzy is right there. And I know that is Geezer Butler right there, I believe. I'm not quite sure who's sitting down and who's standing up, but one of them is Tony Iommi and the other is Bill Ward. I can say that with absolute certainty. I so hope I'm right about this and don't get corrected in the comments because I am going to look very, very silly. But anyways, this is the track list. And we can see right here it was produced by Roger Bain. He came back, he was the producer of the debut record, and it all kicks off with a song called War Pigs, which initially was intended to be entitled, and I'm not sure if I'm saying this correctly, but whatever, Walpurgis or Walpurgis. I don't know, but I don't really fully know what that means, but apparently it means something satanic or demonic or whatever, because the record company allegedly stepped in. I guess they didn't like the backlash that they got from the first record over the satanic themes, if there ever were any, and they said, we're not calling that song Walpurgis, and the band wanted to call the album Walpurgis, and they're like, nope, not doing it. So the band decided to change the name of the song to War Pigs, which I'm fine with. And some editions also say this song is called War Pigs / Luke's Wall. I have no idea what Luke's Wall is supposed to be, but it's fine. This song is War Pigs, and it's about 8 minutes, maybe 7 minutes and change, high 7 minutes, but it's very close to 8 minutes. And it kicks off, and it's very, very, very slow. And it's got a nice brooding rhythm to it, and I absolutely think it's incredible. But then it stops, and all you hear is the drums hitting the cymbals, I guess, going then it goes dun-dun, dun-dun, and it's awesome. Ozzy comes in, he goes, generals gathered in their masses, dun-dun, just like witches at black masses. Funny story. I was at a Styx concert back in 2008, and before Gowan sings Come Sail Away, at least back then, he would start a couple of very famous classic rock songs, sing the first little bit, and then expect the audience to finish it. And he chose War Pigs, and he goes, "Generals gathered in their masses." And then he, points the microphone in the direction of the audience, and it took me a while to catch on what he was doing. I was like, yes, he's singing War Pigs, and I continue it, and I saw a YouTube video of that show, and you can actually hear me, and I was actually pretty proud of that. But anyways, after that little section, we get a very killer jam section, and it's absolutely incredible. It's much, much faster, and everyone is on their A game here. Tony, Geezer, Bill, they all absolutely rock. But then we go into that section once again where the cymbal, where Bill is doing the whole thing where he's going and we once again have the same little rhythm, and Ozzy starts singing again, and the very last line is, begging mercies for their sins, Satan laughing spreads his wings, oh, something, I can't remember. But after that, we get a nice little outro. This thing is a little bit slower, but it's awesome, and it kills, and I love it. Fun fact, when Ozzy Osbourne covers this during his solo career, during that little outro, that final little coda, I guess, he does this whole thing where he goes, whoa. And the thing is this, as far as I can tell, he did not do that when he was performing live with Black Sabbath. However, when Ronnie James Dio joined the band in 1980, they were still playing War Pigs in concert. I mean, of course they're going to. It's an amazing song. And at least on the Live Evil album, he was doing that. And every instance that I know of where Ozzy does that, it was recorded after Live Evil. So I'm not sure if he got the idea from Ronnie, but that would actually be kind of funny if he did. But regardless, whoever is singing the song War Pigs is awesome. We then come to track number 2, which is Paranoid, the title track. And this is a very, very radio-friendly song. It's pretty fast, and it's about, of course, the guy who's paranoid, a guy who's going through some kind of depression or something, and he's questioning whether it's paranoia. And it's pretty fast, and I really, really dig it. Ozzy covers this a lot in his solo career, but this is actually a very funny bit of trivia. This song allegedly took about 20 minutes to write. Apparently, the record company wanted one more song on this album, and Tony got the band together and they started jamming. They came up with the riff, and before they knew it, they had written a classic. But I really do love Paranoid. This was one of the very first Black Sabbath songs I ever heard, and so it holds a very special place in my heart for obvious reasons. But Tony has described the title track as a quote-unquote afterthought. Again, it was just supposed to be a filler song. It was supposed to make side A the appropriate length or whatever, and it turned out to be one of the band's most famous songs, and I think that's pretty incredible. But then we come to track 3, Planet Caravan, and this is a definite change of pace. This thing is very, very soft and very melodic, but it's got a very creepy vibe to it, which I really dig. I think it's this song. It might be Solitude from Master of Reality. I can't remember, but there have been urban legends out there that it's actually Bill Ward who's singing. Well, that has been debunked. It is, in fact, Ozzy Osbourne singing. I actually can play a bit of this on the guitar, but I'm not very good or anything. But really, this sounds a lot more like Pink Floyd. This sounds a lot like Set the Controls to Heart of the Sun, but I don't care. I like it. It's groovy. It's got such a great atmosphere to it, and I just really, really enjoy it. Yeah, it's pretty chill. It's definitely not heavy metal, but I don't care. I love Planet Caravan. And now we come to something that I have got to talk about. Iron Man. It's about 6 minutes or so, or 5 minutes and change. And yes, we've all heard it. Dun, 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 dun. I am Iron Man. Dun, 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 dun. Sorry if that was terrible, but I've got to be honest. I never thought this song was the masterpiece that some claim it is. I like it. It is a good song. It's way better than some of the other stuff out there. But I've just got to say, compared to other stuff that Black Sabbath has done, I do not think this is one of their better songs. And I always thought that the rhythm was a little bit annoying, if that makes any sense. But I'm not trying to rip on Iron Man or anything. I just think they have done a lot better stuff out there. And my favorites from side A is probably going to be War Pigs. In fact, yes. Tonight, I'm going to say my favorite from side A is War Pigs. The entire side is incredible, but War Pigs is my favorite, which I guess is pretty obvious because I talk the most about War Pigs. So let's go ahead and see what is on side B. Starts off with Electric Funeral, which is not a song that the band is very well known for. I doubt you're going to hear it on any greatest hits compilations, but it's still pretty epic. It's got a very, I don't know, almost a psychedelic feel to it at the very beginning. The riff is like wow, 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 and I probably did that terribly. Please don't be too harsh on me. But apparently it's about the apocalypse, which I am fine with. But yeah, Ozzy is killing it here. He gives such a good performance on this. And again, the rhythm is just crazy. It's insane. Of course, again, today it probably wouldn't stand out too much, but you gotta remember, this was released in 1970. No one had ever heard anything this hardcore before. But then we come to Hand of Doom, which apparently is about the threat of nuclear warfare. The hand is about to push the button, which detonates the bomb, and it causes our doom. Starts out with a great little bass riff. I mean, Geezer kicks this thing off, and Ozzy comes in, and the very beginning is very slow, very melodic, and then it starts picking up, and I think it's a pretty solid track. Again, it would not be one of my favorites by Black Sabbath, but I think it is worth a listen, and I think it is a pretty solid effort. And I do highly recommend it. But this thing is also about 7 minutes or so, so it's got quite a very impressive length to it, and they do jam out quite a bit in the middle, and I very much like that. Then we come to Rat Salad, which is an instrumental. I'm not sure how many instrumentals Black Sabbath actually did. I mean, a lot of them, at least on the first couple of albums or so, they really seem like space filler. Like, there's not much to it. Like, Tony will play the guitar for a little bit, maybe a minute or so, and that'll be it. Some of them are just sound effects, which is kind of weird. But Rat Salad, I really think they were trying to do something here. Starts off, and the band is, jamming. They got a nice little riff at the beginning, and then Bill Ward gets to show off his chops here, and it's got a nice little drum solo in the middle. I did a face-off episode where I was comparing Black Sabbath to Led Zeppelin, and I said that Rat Salad was very synonymous with Moby Dick. As in, both of these songs kick off with the band jamming, and in the middle, the drummer kind of gets to show off exactly what he's capable of. But Rat Salad, I think, is not quite as good as Moby Dick, but it's still really, really incredible, and I definitely respect it and love it, even though I think I would give the edge to Moby Dick. And I also did give the edge to Led Zeppelin 2 over Paranoid, but that is no shot at Paranoid because it's a great album. Finally, we end with Fairies Wear Boots. And some editions also refer to this as Fairies Wear Boots / Jack the Stripper, which is kind of weird. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But this starts off, and we got the guitar, and it sounds very, kind of fluffy and it's got kind of a staccato going, I guess. But then, of course, eventually things start kicking in, and it's got a nice swinging beat to it. And I love it. The lyrics are absolutely hilarious. I have made all kinds of hypotheses about what this is actually about. My friends and I back in high school thought it was about drugs, and it might have been about an acid trip, I don't know. But apparently Ozzy Osbourne said this was about an encounter he had with skinheads. So I really don't know what to believe, but the final line is, so I went to the doctor to see what he could give me. He said, I'm sorry, son, but you've gone too far. Because smoking and tripping is all that you do. Yeah, all right now. So that line is incredibly funny, and I cannot get enough of it. But if Ozzy Osbourne says it's about something else other than drugs, I'll believe the guy who wrote it, allegedly. But my favorite from Side B, while I do not think Side B is as strong as Side A, I still think it's a great side, and Fairies Wear Boots is probably going to be my favorite from it. And do I recommend this album? Absolutely, I do. The cover is not really much of anything. I'm still confused what that's supposed to be. But the album itself is absolutely incredible, and it is a Black Sabbath classic. Now, is this their best album? I don't think so. Is it a great album? Yes, it is. And I have heard people say that Black Sabbath was the birth of heavy metal. Well, heavy metal is a very loose term, and I'm not really sure where the line is. There's a lot of gray area in there. My question is this, and I'm not going to say whether I think this is heavy metal or not, whether I think this was one of the first heavy metal albums. I just want to ask you this. If this is heavy metal, then why is it that Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, and Uriah Heep are not? If this is the first heavy metal band, then that would mean those artists are not heavy metal. So ponder on that, if you will. So anyways, thank you all for joining me tonight. I had a great time talking about this album. I have decided what I'm going to do next time, so far, so good. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.